This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Throughout history, many influential people have earned the title of leader, says Armstrong. Leaders look to the future, oblivious to who or how many are following. Being an effective manager requires you to efficiently and effectively work through others, to be what Kevin calls a manacoach. Armstrong shares his proven strategies for implementing management techniques based upon revolutionary concepts to create scalable and sustainable cultures of accountability. Kevin's work, The Miracle Manager, is a guide to aligning ourselves with our company culture and creating a healthy environment through accountability where politics cannot survive. Valeria Teles interviews Kevin G Armstrong, the author of The Miracle Manager, Why True Leaders Rarely Make Great Managers. Kevin G Armstrong is also a speaker, business advisor, disruptor, and authority in implementing simple, proven management solutions. But simple doesn't mean easy. In his diverse and accomplished career, he has taught at the high school and college levels, owned and sold small businesses, been an investment firm top seller, and worked in management as a VP at the corporate level, overseeing agencies throughout North America. Kevin has decades of experience helping business owners, from mom and pops to Fortune 500s, get more out of their business. Kevin currently leads a group of advisors at the Interdependent Training Group, ITG, which advises business leaders on creating clear vision and implementing strategies to hold their management teams accountable for delivering on their vision. Meet Kevin on kevingarmstrong.com. Here is the interview with Kevin G. Armstrong.
In your own words, who is Kevin G. Armstrong?
Who is Kevin G. Armstrong? A disruptor. I think that's been sort of my. I've always been open to new ways of doing things, and I've taught high school music, and I was a coach in physical education in high school as well, and I've been in sales, and I've been in sales management, and I've been in advising businesses for over 20 years now. Business owners and their management teams. So I would say disruptor, because disruption is, people look at it as negative, but disruption is actually a good thing if it's done respectfully.
You inspired me to ask a question. What is the best thing about being disrupted?
What's the best thing about being disrupted? You learn a lot about people. You can learn a lot about people very quickly by bringing in different perspectives and seeing how open they are to them.
So before we talk about some specific topics in your book, The Miracle Manager, Why True Leaders Rarely Make Good Managers, I have these warm-up questions, as I mentioned, off record. The first one for you, Kevin, had to be this one. What does it mean to be a human being to you?
Wow, what a great question. I was looking at some of your stuff in preparation for this talk. Last February, I had the pleasure of meeting Alan Mulally, and Alan Mulally took Boeing in a leadership position through 9/11, and then in 2006 he joined Ford Motor Company, and Ford Motor Company was about to go out of business. He was hired by Bill Ford, the grandson of Henry Ford, and he was the first CEO ever in the industry to be hired from outside the auto industry to run one of the big three in terms of Ford. And he said, there's one word that we don't use in business enough, and that is the word love. And to hear a CEO, a very, very powerful, very successful CEO say that, yeah, I just connected with him. And also in terms of good parenting, right? He said, he was asked, what is your number one secret to running a company? And he said, zero tolerance when it comes to process and behavior, but with love, right?
Right,
and so,
right,
and so
right.
I can't even remember what your question was, but that's what I always refer to in terms of, kindness and we in business we call it unconditional acceptance, but the
Yeah.
word is love, right? That's what
Mm.
love is.
Everything that you add love and kindness to it, it's like magic. It turns into something great, a great lesson or some beautiful experience. What does the word miracle mean to you?
Above reproach, well, a miracle, right? It is something that we've never seen before or never thought we'd see in terms of whatever we're describing it. And it actually came from the movie The Miracle, produced by Disney, which is a movie about the 1980 men's Olympic hockey team, which went forward to beat the Russians in order to advance the gold medal, and that was a miracle. So I guess anything that's just totally unexpected in terms of moving forward or achieving something.
And I assume you believe in miracles.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think you've been out too much if you don't. You haven't really been living life too much if you haven't seen,
Right.
if you don't believe in miracles, right?
I agree 100%. Yeah. What is life to you? Not what life is about, but what is this experience in the human body?
Wow. What is life to me? Life is definitely defined. We don't know when, but we know there's a beginning and we know there's an end. And for me, life is just about giving all you can, with the energy that we all have access to the same energy. It just is, some of us, like you, allow more energy through your body than others, right? And so that energy is just limited by how you think. And so I think life is in terms of defining life, is just the ability to harness and let energy flow.
What do you think is the purpose of your life at this time?
The purpose of my life is to get people to think through disruption, to change paradigms, and also for myself, right? To be open to paradigm shifts.
And speaking of change, what is the meaning of death to you?
The end.
Right. The end of something, right, Kevin?
the end of the energy form that you're in right now. And I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I do believe in a soul, and I believe like there's no two souls that are unique, right? So the soul sort of uses this body of ours until the body is finished, and then maybe the soul moves on, and maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
At this time, given the current situation since the beginning of this year, what do you think is the world's greatest need?
I think it's this year or any year. I think it's any year in the past, right? It's just it's open-mindedness, it's connection, it's all raveled up, and I should be asking you questions about love, right? I mean, it's all about the need to resist judgment and to resist having to be right, and just listening and connecting, and looking at different forms of energy and trying to connect with that. I think this year has just exposed the need for it.
Right. What is freedom to you? What is to be free?
I think the number one, my dad always told us there was 5 freedoms, and one of them is freedom from fear, right? So I would say freedom is the ability to think on your own and express yourself without fear.
I'm wondering how we overcome that, because most of us are paralyzed by fear. Are you practicing this kind of way of living without fear?
Well, I was listening to some of your other podcasts, and I read up on a lot of stuff that you do, right? And I think the practice is to protect your subconscious. I mean, your subconscious is just the history. It's the history of when you came into being, and it's just a bunch of emotional files, right?
Right.
And so you really need to stop watching the news. I haven't watched the news in 30 years, right? I mean, and now with social media, I say media plus social media equals hysteria, which we're seeing right now,
Right.
And so, I mean, and it's not even news anymore. It's just people, like we go back to the judgment and this constant craving for certainty, right? And you have these people not telling the news, but giving their personal opinions, which are just totally sort of where their sponsors say they have to be coming from. And so I think it's just protecting your subconscious.
Wow, I never heard it that way, Kevin. That's refreshing. Protecting your subconscious, which a lot of people connect that to the soul, the subconscious, to the source, to God itself, which is interesting the way you say it. Yeah, it's a sacred place. How did you become a writer?
I wrote a book 20 years ago called Normal is Nowhere. And it was just, I have to republish it, but it was just a book on attitude and interdependence, body, mind, and soul I use, which you're a master at. And so just the interconnectedness, interdependence, integrity, the words that we use all the time. But when you sit down with somebody and say, hey, what does this word mean? They talk for half an hour and you walk away and you don't have any better understanding. I should be able to tell you in a word, in a sentence, at most 2 sentences, what a word means if I truly understand it. And so I discovered there's a whole bunch of words that we use in our English language that, there's a whole bunch of different interpretations of what that word means. And it's really big on teams or in organizations to define that word in terms of how we're going to use it in this organization.
Speaking of words, leadership, that's a big word. What is true leadership from your perspective?
The ability to look to the future and do what you feel is right. That's it.
Oh, wow.
We take, when it comes to defining leadership, we treat it like spaghetti. We throw it at the wall, and whatever sounds cool stays, on the wall. So, and then, that's great. But, when Rosa Parks over 60 years ago refused to vacate her seat on that bus, was she worried about who was following her? She just said enough is enough. And the bus driver phoned the police. The police came on board. She wouldn't get out of her seat for a white person, which is unbelievable in my lifetime, but that was against the law. And they took this quiet, humble, domestic worker and threw her in jail. So nobody followed her to jail. Nobody followed Nelson Mandela to jail for 27 years, right? But that was the birthplace of the leadership. And so if they both died in jail and nobody ever heard of them, would you still consider them leaders? And I would, because they looked to the future and stuck with how they felt, right? And then there's all these leaders that have died. Emily Dickinson, we wouldn't even know her poetry unless her sister had gathered up all of her poems and published them after she died. So she's a true leader in literature, but we didn't even know it while she was alive.
You said now having a vision. So the word for leader is the first quality, vision. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I do consider these people who stand for themselves, for what they believe in, strongly, the core of themselves. In your book, you say something interesting. You said, it's not over when you fail. It is over when you quit. And that makes me think about, why do so many of us run away and are scared of failure?
Well, sometimes it's a good thing. I mean, you should listen to your inner voice once in a while. Usually your inner voice is a bad thing, but, once in a while, you have your inner voice is telling you to do something, and you should be afraid and you should react to that fear. It's called survival, right? But I think that's the exception. I think far too often we're just pumped up by fear. I mean, all around us, you turn on the media, you turn everything that comes into our minds. If we don't filter that out and protect our subconscious, we live in a state of fear. And now this year, more than anything, right? I live in Canada. You'd have to know 40,000 people to know somebody that died of COVID, right? You'd have to know 4,000 people. You'd have to know 4,000 people know a person who's died of COVID. And if you did know somebody, there's a 96% chance they're over 80 and have two pre-existing conditions, right? They're going to die in the next couple of years anyway. Yet we have just, some people out there are just walking around in this total state of fear.
You also, in your book, you mentioned that failure is a critical component of success. So when it comes to business, it's very important not to be afraid of failure.
Exactly.
Another question for you, Kevin, is how do we know when we are letting go of something and not quitting? What is the difference?
Well, a trap is something you're not willing to let go of, right? So, and it's important to know where you are trapped in your life, and it's not, and you do have traps in your life. Like I love my sons, and so no matter what happens to them, I will stop what I'm doing and help them, right? So in a case that's kind of a trap, but I know that's a trap. It's something I'm not prepared to walk away from, and so. It's just about identifying what is it you're prepared to walk away from in life, and what aren't you? And there's a whole pile of things on your list that really, what would be the harm in walking away from it? I mean, that whole thing about quitting, it's not over when you fail. It's over when you quit. Well, sometimes it's a good thing to quit, because you put so much resources in it, and you're chasing something. If you were chasing the idea of a video rental store, right, 15 years ago, you probably would have been in a good position to make up your mind to quit that and look at something else, because there's no market for it now. So, but the problem is that there's a book called Essentialism, and it's a great book in terms of the trap is we throw something into something in terms of a resource, and it keeps failing, so we keep spending more energy, money, time trying to make this thing work, and it doesn't, and so sometimes it is good to quit.
I agree. And that might go back to the idea of practicing self-awareness, self-knowledge, knowing your values, your purpose, as you speak in the book. And speaking of that, talk to me about purpose. You say purpose, not position, is the key to performance.
So 4 years ago, my dad died. So he was a great example of he was one of the old boys, right? He would work in his office all day, go for lunch with his buddies for 2 hours, have a gin and tonic, come home, not exercise. And so he didn't have the last 20 years of his life wasn't fun. It was visiting doctors, diabetes, getting parts of his toes amputated, then part of his leg. And then he died. And then in 2016, his kidney shut down. So he was on dialysis. So he decided they were going to take off his leg and then another leg. So he decided to give up the dialysis and die. My mom, on the other hand, was in great shape. She was, in great spirits and in great shape. And so I thought she was, my dad was worried about leaving her when he made that decision to end his life. And I said, don't worry. I mean, look at her. She's going to be just fine. They were high school sweethearts, and they married, and they were married 67 years or something like that when he died, 66 years, right? And she died within 3 years. And the reason is because he was what? Her purpose in life. She looked like she had nothing else. I didn't realize this until this happened, right? But she just basically shut down because the only purpose she had in her life was looking after him, which is a dangerous thing to do.
Wow.
It's something women have historically have found themselves in that position, right, where they lose their spouse and they're just lost. So like, to me, in the last 3 years, that whole idea of purpose, I'd probably write a book on it, but the thing is that there's so many books out there already. Purpose is paramount. Purpose is pinnacle. Purpose is everything. And it's funny because my daughter-in-law said to me, well, yeah, but you can't say that because people, don't have a great purpose. And I said, well, who are you to value it, right? I go down to Las Vegas and I get on a rental car bus, and the bus driver, he grabs my bags, grabs everybody's bags. He's running around. He gets in the bus. I mean, I take a rental car bus, I don't know, 60 times a year. And And this guy, he's like talking to people as he's driving in his rearview mirror. He's looking at people and asking them where they're from, and he's cracking jokes. And the whole place, it was the fastest 13-minute or 12-minute bus ride from Las Vegas airport to the rent-a-car station I've ever had. When we get off, everybody is giving him, money. And I say, you can be a bus driver or you can be the bus driver, right? You can be a salesperson or you can be the salesperson. What would you rather do? And so what is your purpose? And obviously that guy understood his purpose was not to drive a bus. It was to make people's day, and so people would say, well, yeah, if he's a bus driver, I don't care. I'd rather hang out with him any day, right? than most people I know, because this guy was exceptional, right? Exceptional. And it was all about purpose. So I could go on for an hour and a half about purpose. We better move on.
What you just said is fascinating to me. And I have been asking the question, what is the measurement? Like, how do we know when we have found our purpose from your experience?
So I just learned this over the last couple of years, right? Because I love words. And English is my first language. I should be able to speak better when I look at people like, you that can speak 2 or 3 languages. So the thing is that what was the question again?
How do we know when we have found our purpose? What are the signs?
Yeah. So what I discovered in the last couple of years is that the difference between purpose and passion, right? And purpose is external. It's what makes me feel good about serving others. And then passion is what makes my heart sing, what turns me on, right? And so purpose is, I think it's just if it makes your heart sing. If you find passion in your purpose, then, man, you've got it made.
So would you say that passion is connected to joy, this feeling of contentment and inner peace?
I'd say purpose more than passion because purpose is giving, right? It's giving to the outside. And so I think joy comes from helping others. I think joy comes from solving problems for other people or helping other people or, making other people happy or joyful. Like, I like joy because you can't say that word without a smile on your face.
So true. Yeah. Yeah. So true. Me too. From what I understand, your book, the main subject, which is kind of refreshing to me because I never read anything about it. Coaches, managers, and leaders. You separate them, but in a way you connect coaches to managers. And you gave them a name. And so you put those words together. Help me with the pronunciation. Manacoaches?
Perfect. Manacoach, right? And so manacoach is just a great manager or coach. A manacoach is an exceptional manager or coach.
So what is the difference between the manacoaches and leaders?
Leaders, they don't have to inspire. People think leaders have to inspire others and leaders have to do this. And that's where it gets all mixed up. And I feel sorry for young people because they see leadership as this big thing that's really huge to attain, right? And they give up. They just go, wow, there's just so many definitions to this, right? In business or any organization, I was the top salesperson, the leader in an international investment firm. And unfortunately, like most companies still do today, because of my proven track record in sales, they made me a manager. And think about it. I could prospect, qualify, book appointments, present, and close as good as the best of them. So why not put me in charge of an international sales force with the aim of getting that kind of performance out of others? The problem is I didn't have the awareness, the patience, or the interest in understanding and leveraging the talent and abilities in others. So I failed, and I failed miserably. But the good news is, from failure, there's lessons. And after working for over 20 years now, exclusively with business owners and management teams, I've seen that placing leaders in management roles is an epidemic, and it can be destructive to the leader, the organization, and the employees. Steve Jobs is a great leader. His vision, his ability to look to the future, and stick with what he thought was right, unbelievable, exceptional, epic, right? But the thing is that if you'd taken him and forced him, coerced him, and sensitized him into a position of management, Apple and Pixar probably wouldn't exist today. He proved it twice at 2 different companies, but he was not a manager or a coach. people couldn't stand them. A manager or coach is able to connect. They're able to look at a person with empathy and understand what that person's thinking. And they understand that there's different ways to motivate different people. What could work for one person would destroy another person on the team. So they understand behavior styles and personalities. They're organized, which is why why I failed as a manager is I'm not organized. I think I've got some leadership attributes, but I don't have the important critical attributes of a great manager or coach or a manacoach.
I'm wondering if we can put these qualities together, somehow create a balance between having vision and at the same time become somewhat organized, empathetic, having the communication skills, because that's another one you see you have here for the great managers. They're communicators, very good at it. And some leaders are not. Yeah, I'm wondering if we can balance some of these qualities.
Well, the answer, I think, is no. We're not all wired the same. I look at you and your videos, right? And you're passionate about living a joyful life, through body, mind, and soul. You're in shape. You're thinking about what you're eating. You're not afraid to go on video and talk about it. There are some people that would rather die than be on video or be promoting something. But they're excellent. They can take a spreadsheet and they can make 7 pages sing together within about 6 minutes, right? They can take information or a computer programmer, and they can sit down and in 4 hours do it. If I could get my head around it, it would take me 4 years to do. So this thing about trying to send ducks to eagle school, it's got to stop. We got to stop working on our weaknesses, realize what our talents are.
Right.
And that's what a great coach does. And a coach on a team, they go, hey, you know what? You're not that fast at skating, but you are really good at covering, so I'm going to put you on defense, right? They look at people's individual, they don't try and make that person skate faster and try and put them in a forward position, right? And so that's where we screw up, because we go, look, you want to be a leader? And the thing is, anybody can be a leader. If you see somebody being bullied, you go over and stop it. It's looking to the future and saying, this is just not good. And so you go over and you do what you can to stop it. That's leadership. Everybody else just stands around and watches. You go over, you see a piece of garbage on the road, and you pick it up and put it in the garbage can. That's leadership, because everybody else just walks by it, right? So that's leadership. But in terms of a real special quality in managers and coaches, you've got to have empathy. You've got to be you got to be organized. You got to have a passion for putting other people first, right? You can't be narcissistic.
Right.
So, can you take a person who was born or learned this wiring through their upbringing? Why do you want to spend time trying to rewire that? Just put them in a position where they're happy and let them do their work on their, discover their purpose and work on that.
Are you trying to create a program for companies, corporations to follow and to apply, implement?
Well, I'm extremely blessed because I met Gino Wickman about 11 years ago. I fell in love with his integrity, fell in love with his leadership and his passion and purpose for the EOS system. And so I've been certified with EOS worldwide. And there's enough research out there to say if you want to make a change in organizations, you have to start at the top. So to use this system and work with management teams so that they can understand their strengths and weaknesses, and understand that each person on the team, some people can connect, some people can get things done, some people can charge through a glass house, right? That there's these different energies we can harness. It's a great system. And so, to walk into a company and go, I can make your company healthy by following this system. Same with you. I bet you can make people happy by following your system, right? Joyful, or, that balance between your health and your wealth and who you are, right?
Talk to me for a moment, Kevin, about the term culture in business and companies.
Yeah, there's a word. I didn't even learn that word. I tried to figure out a definition of that word for 20 years. And then 10 years ago, I was at a university and this guy who had a PhD in leadership, he was speaking and he used the word culture. So I raised my hand and I said, so how do you define culture? And finally, somebody didn't try to make it too complicated. He goes, culture is everything.
Mm.
If I walk into a room of a group of people, a company, or I walk into an organization, or I walk into a country, if you look at the difference between Mexico and the difference between Germany, if I said to you, if you like things to be on time, everybody stands in line, everything is based on time. If the refrigeration mechanic says he's going to be here at 5 to 3, he's going to be here at 10 to 3, right? On Friday,
Yeah.
right? Which country would you go to? Which country resonates with you, right? Because it's you definitely go to Germany, right?
True.
But in Mexico, it's more of a polychronic culture where it's about relationships. It's about, time is second place. It's somebody's going to deliver water. It might be this Friday. It might be next Friday. It's everybody. There's just, it's just a different culture, right? And it's not a matter that Germany's right and Mexico's wrong or vice versa. It's just what resonates with you.
Right.
And so to help an organization define their culture and get away from these BS words like honesty and integrity, and let's go with a short sentence like everybody in this company is prepared to push a broom. That's a core value statement that explains your culture. And not every company has that. I have one company that has that as a core value, which means that if you're vice president of finance and they need help loading trucks downstairs, you're going downstairs. But you can't work for another company I work with that's an engineering firm where they all went to university for 9 years and they're not going to go downstairs and load trucks or clean bathrooms. So you can't have a core value statement. It's a different culture. And so just to understand, it's the way people interact and breathe. And it's important to understand what is that culture you're going to work with? Can you work within it? Because if it's going to kill you emotionally and spiritually if it's a different culture, right?
How some people identify the culture of a company before they apply to work for them.
Boy, there's a great question. I don't think, I think you can ask questions and because they're all going to have their core value statements and they're going to say, this is what our culture is about, blah, blah, blah. But you don't know if it's just a bunch of backstabbing, unhealthy, political, terrible place to work. You don't know that going in, right? But I think that the secret, we talked earlier about traps. And when you go into a company and you think you're trapped because of money, because you need to have this income, and you sacrifice your soul because you're in a place that just doesn't resonate with you, I mean, I think that's almost the same as committing suicide.
I agree.
So to put you and I both know, we know wealthy people, and they're the most unhealthy, unjoyful people you'd ever want to meet, right? They've got all this money, they got this lifestyle that everybody would just dream to have, and they're miserable.
So true. Not all of them. Yeah, I have met some, but they're not. Some of them, they're actually very joyful people. Some of us choose to balance the body, mind, spirit and bring everything together. And that's a beautiful thing when that happens, because now you're healthy physically and you have wealth.
Thanks for turning the conversation back to a positive. I was getting a bit of a negative crap there. Good for you.
Talk to me, Kevin, about chapter 6. That was a very interesting chapter about the power of vulnerability, being vulnerable. So what is being vulnerable and why is it so important?
Being vulnerable is just, it's you said about being authentic, right? You can't be authentic unless you're vulnerable. Vulnerable is knowing what you're afraid of. It's knowing what your fears are. It's not having a fear of talking about what you are afraid of or what scares you or where your weaknesses are or where you need help, right? And the problem with vulnerability is you can't be vulnerable unless you're aware of those things. And that's why I wish they would quit calling them therapists and call them personal coaches, because there's such a negative connotation to therapy. I saw one of the videos, it wasn't your video, but I think it was posted on your channel, right? That whole idea of understanding your emotional history and understanding why you react to things a certain way. But, Brené Brown's video, like 12 years ago, I went to a conference and the guy on the stage said, you can't be truly powerful unless you're willing to be vulnerable. And for especially for men, because we've been taught that vulnerability is what?
Weakness, right?
Weakness. We've been conditioned that way, right? So that turned me upside down when he said that. I was like, what do you mean vulnerability is? You can't be powerful unless you're willing to be vulnerable, right?
Right.
And 2 years later, Brené Brown's video on the TEDx Houston came out, and I watched that, and that explained it to me, and I really got it, to the point where for the last 10 years, when somebody has a problem with a manager in their company, I say, let that person watch that video for 20 minutes and ask them what they got out of it. And if they didn't get anything out of it, get them into a different position. They shouldn't be coaching or managing people. If you can watch that video for 20 minutes and not get it, then put them in front of a computer or get them where they're dealing with something that's, not human, like robots or something, right? Because it's such a powerful, powerful thing. A team and their function and their collaboration and their health is so much better when everybody on the team is just talking about where they need help and where they're weak, as opposed to trying to be a legend in their own mind.
What are some of the, let's say, strategies or methods that you have used yourself to find your vulnerabilities and embrace them?
Oh, 3 things.
Yeah.
Number 1, therapy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Number 2, therapy. And number 3, therapy.
Okay, now we know exactly what to do and how to do it to get there.
But I mean, if you find the right person, anytime somebody says they have a good therapist, I say, okay, let me book them, because I want to find out how I'm doing. I just want to check me out. Let's go, right? Because the more you can learn about yourself, because there's this stuff in our history that, our subconscious does a beautiful job when something traumatic happens to us, in terms of pounding it into our sub memory, so we can't remember it. And then these people, when they're in their 20s, if they had a abusive incident, or a series of incidents when they're young, all of a sudden these pictures are coming up in their mind, and they think they're going crazy, right? So, and the way we feel physiologically, we feel things physiologically before we feel them emotionally. Your body will tell you, and you know this better than I do. Your body will tell you when you're about to get into a fight or flight, or when something is about to trigger you, right? And you don't even know why until you know what's happened in your past. So to be vulnerable would be to know those things, and you can't know those things unless you have a real professional or a real expert who knows how to do that, to sort of dig it up.
My work, it's all about healing, which, getting to know yourself, basically. Another point that you made, this is a topic in your book under chapter 6, saying you are sorry versus asking for forgiveness. So there was a difference. Talk to me for a moment about that, Kevin.
So I got this from David Sweet probably 25 years ago, and he was speaking at a conference, and it just hit me right in the head, right? The fact is, when you say I'm sorry, all you're saying is a statement. And whenever I'm speaking to an audience, I'll say, raise your hands if you know somebody in your life that just says sorry all the time, and you don't really pay attention to it anymore, because they just say sorry, right? They keep doing the same thing, and then they give this sorry like it's supposed to correct it. And so what's even in coaching, when you're coaching people or managing people, or in sales, asking questions takes a lot more confidence, because you have to be prepared for the answer. Right? So asking questions is a lot, and you learn. You can't learn from making statements, but you learn from asking questions, right? So if you and I were in a relationship, and you did something, and I say sorry, in your mind you could be going, oh yeah, here we go again. He's saying sorry. But if I say to you, I ask this question, it's a lot like, just try it when you go out there, and just try asking that question. Can you forgive me? I really screwed up here. Can you forgive me? And now I got to stop and wait for the answer. And your answer might be what? No. Which means I've said sorry too many times, or I've lost your trust, or I've lost your faith. And now we have work to do in our relationship, because either the relationship's over, or I've got some work to do to try and figure this out. Right? But it is just, when I always ask people, go and just try it. Next time somebody in your family, somebody at work, you screw up, which we all do, just be real and say, hey, just try asking that question, because it's hard. It's hard to ask that question. Just, can you forgive me? I was in a session two months ago, and I said something that offended somebody on the team. And he really got very upset. And I just said, you know what? I screwed up. I didn't realize this was that important to you. And this is the second time I had met with this team, right? And I said, I really screwed up. Can you forgive me? And he said, no. And I should have stopped everything right there. I didn't. I went to the end of the day, and then I told him it's probably good if we don't work together anymore. But I should have stopped it right there, because once somebody says that, I should have said, okay, so we can't move forward, until we get to, until we resolve this. I actually broke my own rule. I shouldn't have gone through the rest of the day. I should have just stopped right there and said, but I was on an agenda, so I wanted to get them through this session. But it's everything stops when someone says no, because there's no point moving forward unless you're going to work on it. And so really confident manacoaches, they will say, I screwed up. Can you forgive me?
What is success to you today, and what is to be successful?
I'll answer the second question first. So I think success is a great concept because you get to define it, right? And so, success in terms of the definition is just what it might that you want to be a fantastic parent, or, a really connected grandparent, or that you want to make the greatest organization in terms of your business ever, right? So, or you want to be the go-to person in terms of the subject of joy, on the subject of joy. And so, you get to define it any way you want. My definition is the number of people that really feel in their stomach when they hear that you passed away. They have a heart killing moment or a stomach turning moment when they hear that you passed away. That to me would be the definition, that the number of people you touched in a good way, right?
That means that we are trying to be the best human beings we can be. And to me, it goes back to kindness and, living that joy. So I have 3 more questions for you. What was the hardest lesson to learn about yourself as of today?
I had to learn. I think that we're all flawed. I don't know. That's funny. That was a hard lesson. But boy, it sure sets you free. Right? It really sets you free, right? There's a whole bunch of the vulnerability and power. You can't be powerful unless you're willing to be vulnerable. I think that set me free in a lot of ways, because that led to the fact that we're all flawed. But that was a hard lesson, right? Because you're so programmed into thinking that showing weakness is weakness.
Yeah. And also that perfectionism, trying to be perfect. Yeah.
Oof, yeah. I feel sorry for I really feel that's never been a problem for me. I feel sorry for people who are trapped in that world.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, it is, Kevin. Yeah. Right. 2 more questions. If you knew you would die soon, meaning losing the body, would you make any change in your life or do anything differently?
No.
That was quick.
Well, man, I live in a country where we have free healthcare, free education. My parents came from Ireland as immigrants. I've lived better than 99.9% of the world population. I've climbed mountains. I've hiked for weeks. I sail. I've golfed. I do everything I've ever wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And with the little time I have left, and on a total spectrum, it is a little time, right? Is how can you give back and how can you impact people in a positive way? But I don't know what those things are. But in terms of my fulfillment and the life I've lived and all of I'm privileged, right? I'm not colored. I'm a white man. So I have benefited from this privilege and almost the point of guilt, right? Because I look at how other people are treated. If you're a woman, what women have had to go through, and they still have a lot of stuff to go through. I like Chris Rock. He says, it's not that blacks have come a long way in the last 50 years. It's that white people have become a lot less crazy. And then the same thing, it's not that women have come a long way in the last 50 years. It's that men have become a lot less crazy. So I'm a white man living in a white man's world. And if I've got something to complain about, I should be ashamed of myself.
What are 3 things about life you know for sure as of now?
That it's short would be number 1. That you've got to live every moment and every day. That it's got no guarantees. and and it only has time for those people that can pick themselves up, brush themselves off, and move forward. It doesn't have time for people that feel sorry for themselves.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your presence, for your authenticity. I love how real, how true you are, or you came across to me. I felt it. Thank you so much for your wisdom too, Kevin.
Well, thanks for the invite. Like I said, I really enjoy going through your stuff, and I really believe in it. I really believe in it.
Thank you. One more question. Where can we find more information about you, your books, products, services, and future projects?
Oh, you just go to kevingarmstrong.com. It's all there. Or the miraclemanager.com. It's all the same website.
Right. You have two websites. I'll have them listed too. Thank you so much again, Kevin, and we'll talk soon.
Valeria, thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Kevin G. Armstrong and his work, please visit kevingarmstrong.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.